Hello and welcome to this wonderful evening. We actually had the pleasure to be here exactly 1 year and 1 day ago, and probably some of you followed the talk back then. My name is Marco Massinger, and next to me is the wonderful Ed Lachman. And we will be within the very, very vague title, Meeting with Ed Lachman. We actually came up with a short or 1 hour long ride through the world of monochrome, through the world of the EL zone system, and we're happy to take you on this journey. And now I would give it to Ed to introduce you.
Well, thank you for coming. The first thing I have to admit is what I'm doing is illegal and not approved. They're editing this film, and I told the director that I was just going to show some footage to a few friends. So you're the few friends. But Aeroflex went out of their way and did this incredible thing of making a large format monochromatic camera in the end, like in 3 weeks. I talked about it with Marco 3 months before, but I never imagined it was going to happen. So that's why I'm here, all right? So anyway, and also in an hour is the Music Video Awards, and I'd rather be there.
So we speed up a bit. So the journey to the, or with the monochrome camera started quite a while ago this year in winter still. I think it was February or March, and February actually. And yeah, Ed, will you just want to say some words how things started and what was the kickoff for this journey?
Well, the director, this was a film shot in South America with a South American director. I'm not trying to give it away. And he always wanted to shoot black and white, and he actually got approval to shoot in black and white. And so obviously the first way to think about it was either we shoot it in black and white negative, or we shoot it in color negative film and then transfer it to an inner negative to do the black and white output, and even to shoot it maybe in color digitally and then output it in black and white. Until this happened, when I started to speak to Marco about it, he encouraged me that he would talk to Ari. And someone that was like crucial for this to happen was, you know, Ari Rental and Manfred Yarn? Yeah. And then there are also 2 of the designers here that we should recognize. Why don't you?
Yeah, the 2 Davids. But if we could just turn on the camera feed, please, because a little spoiler on the imagery. That's why we picked the T1.
The monitor. You got to turn the monitor. Oh.
Here you can see those guys.
Yeah. They see there. That's black and white.
So okay, Ed is going complete against protocol, so you can also see them in EL zone system, of course. Something we thought we would keep for later, but let's continue.
Well, that's just the start.
We would switch back again.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so our wish was that we would have monochromatic images, and the director convinced Netflix that we would shoot it in actual black and white, and then I didn't want to encourage him to say that we could do it. I just said there was a possibility, and Ari came through, and I was really surprised. I was kind of giving up hope that we could do it that way. And now there was green screen or blue, there had to be blue screen in the film because there's vampires in the film, and they fly around. So, you know, we had to be against backgrounds that they could fly around. And I even did research how they did that in black and white, and there was a process, a Williams process, where they could actually do it in black and white, but we didn't go that far. So, but it did encourage me, because when I saw, when the camera came to us, and I had a comparison between the color camera, and this was also in the Mini LF, and the black and white camera, and I made the color camera monochromatic. There was still a big difference in not only in the depth of the blacks and the whites, but I discovered the ASA had changed, because you're not using all those pixels to create the color. Now they can be used for luminosity. So and they told me at ARRI and through Mark that they didn't have time to really do enough tests to know what ASA the camera could be. But I found out it was almost 3/4 of a stop faster. So the 800 was 1280 and the 1280 was 2000. And that was really a godsend also in a lot of these locations. So maybe we just go on from there.
You already noticed that I just continued here, like to sum things up, because that is the really impressive achievement, like from Ed's, from the conversation Ed and myself had, like in February. It was very, very short notice, end of February actually, to come up with an idea, and we were thinking about the past. Ed already mentioned, like shooting in a monochrome film, shooting in color, digitally, printing it out, or using a monochrome digital cinema camera. And you already saw the spoiler here, and there were cameras that pre-existed from several manufacturers. They either were too big, because you chose a very special path?
Well, yeah, the problem was that the director wanted to use a 15-foot techno crane, and the way to, on the crane, a crane would take a heavier camera, but the balancing, to be able to use the head, it would only take a lighter weight camera like the LF. So we had to rule out the camera that's here, which is a 65.
That is the Mini LF.
That is?
That is your camera.
Oh, all right.
that is the exact camera you had in Chile.
All right. I thought they couldn't bring it. All right. all right. So we ruled out the 65, and then there are other camera manufacturers that created a monochromatic camera. I won't mention Red, and but we weren't happy with the look of it. You know, the kind of the, I don't know. He says I shouldn't say the sharpness of it, but that's what appeared to the director, that he didn't like the feeling of it. But you know, ARRI has a different feeling to it than the other camera manufacturers, and it really fit. The other thing that I was able to do is I had rehoused a set of Baltar lenses, not super Baltars, but the original lenses that were used for rack-over cameras. And because the flange focal distance is so short, people forgot about these lenses in the reflex days of, you know, cinema cameras. But now in the digital world, there's a much closer gap between the mount and the film plane. And so somebody in LA, Alex, who runs Zero Optics, told me he could rehouse Baltar lenses. And so, God, this was like the perfect. Now I was using black and white lenses that shot Magnificent Ambers, Touch of Evil, Citizen Kane on the LF camera that was monochromatic. So that was what I ended up doing.
And there are many advantages that Ed already mentioned early on of monochromatic cameras not having Bayer pattern or some other pattern to demosaic. You don't see Maury. You have higher or better signal to noise ratio, higher dynamic range, better low light sensitivity, and it really is something very different. There are some monochromatic still cameras out in the world that are very liked by many of us. And yeah, it was just a very interesting endeavor in that regard, but not trying to get boring with too many technical details about the advantages of shooting true monochromatic.
One of the things I forgot is you can use filters. You can use the filters the way they did, use orange 25s or reds. You can use filters to alter the contrast and the saturation of the image, which I wouldn't be able to do if I used a color camera. Now you could say, well, you could do that in post, but yeah, how much time and money do you have to do that? And actually you can't do totally that, what you can do with filters on a monochromatic image. So that was another advantage, was that I wanted to use, my older color filters for the black and white.
And it's a whole different story of trust and collaboration if you go those paths that could never taken out. Like if you put a red filter in front of a monochromatic camera, then the skies are quite dramatic and nature looks pretty much different, and skin tones look quite beautiful. So it started a crazy ride. We started the impossible, finding somebody who was eager, building a monochromatic camera that catered all our needs. And we found those people at Ari Rental. First point of contact was, as always, Manfred Jahn in Munich. And we were creating the idea for the mini LF monochrome. There has been a monochromatic version of the Alexa XT, as well as of the Alexa 65, but Mini LF somehow was missing in the lineup yet till that date. And it was quite crazy because we, of course, also were pretty overly ambitious. And overly ambition is, in that case, part of was part of my agenda here in Germany. We had some crazy ideas, like creating, using the internal ND filter slots to make a multi-spectral camera that you could switch between infrared, visible light, or full spectrum. We even thought about actually not getting fully rid of a mosaic and thinking about using differently sensitive photo sites, essentially putting NDs with probably 6 stops or something like that in front of individual photo sites to get a like 20 plus stop dynamic range camera, probably 25 stops. And we were thinking about crazy things, but Ed's shoot was approaching closer and closer. We were probably 6 weeks till like the final prep week. So we had to face reality. And move on, yeah. That is what Ed said back then. But I'm very curious what Ari comes up with the monochrome series of cameras in the future. We had a prototype back then. They have now wonderful working cameras today, but only 2, I think, at the moment. Very scarce. I'm sure this project hasn't ended yet, and they'll come up with some crazy ideas. So we stick to the basics, took a mini LF. Ari was able to remove the color filter array, and they made sure that it worked, and this involved quite many steps, especially if you consider changing the image pipeline from a color pipeline to a monochrome pipeline. Even though Ari had some experience with that, we were still quite afraid if they could do it in time. But they succeeded, and this is what came out of it. This is exactly that camera that you see here. That was the first ever test on the 27th of May. So you notice 2 months after we had the idea, probably 3-4 weeks after Manfred agreed to do it. And yeah, that's not as talented cinematographer trying to shoot some test clips. We actually did filter tests in the beginning to show also to all parties that it really worked, behaved like probably film would behave, and it was very interesting. This is Munich Hackerbrücke. Shot those things after extensive lab tests that day, probably only an hour till the sun was going down. And this is the actual first clip that was ever shot on that camera. And this is like straight out of camera, of course. Raw, yeah, raw with Rec 709 conversion for the screen. And yeah, and it uses a red filter, I just noticed on the slide. So yeah, and then it was like right after this date, I think 2 or 3 days later, the camera got shipped somewhere, got shipped to Chile, and some crazy men started using it.
Move on.
Move on. So you want to say something about what you've been using it for?
You know, in black and white, you know, the old days, they used hard light. So I was pleasantly surprised how the hard light would hold up with the digital. You know, I've had experiences, like I'm not there to work with harder light in film, but I was afraid in the digital world it would be too crisp. But it came about that I could still use it the way I used it in film. So that was a pleasant surprise.
And we have some more impressions that could probably end Ed's career. Some mysterious streaming company would know.
Yeah, well, part of this film is also shot during the 1700s supposedly in France. And so this is an image that we go back in time. And basically it's lit with a balloon and just fire effects. And I was probably about a 2.8, and I had no problem shooting at 1600 or 2000, and it held up. Yeah. So, oh yeah, if you would not take pictures of this, because if it ends up on the internet, I'm going to get in trouble. Unless you want to get me in trouble. All right.
Yeah, and of course, doing all these things and being probably some of you being here a year ago, you won't expect Ed to like not talk about some very special topic, and it's the EL zone system, especially as this shoot was the first ever shoot where actual production product was used to use the EL zone system on set. For shooting the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, right now I have almost all of the camera manufacturers, and still even, to say they want to implement the zone system, the EL zone system. But I was very fortunate, and it's partly through all of you who have used it or, you know, wrote to people or you know, responded to articles, that Small HD incorporated it into their monitors. And the incredible thing is they have the profile of all the cameras, the Sony, the Arri, the Red. So you can use the monitor on any camera and it's going to react the way it would if it's built into the camera. I would certainly prefer it to be in the camera. So this was such an advantage to use this in black and white. So I felt like I was Ansel Adams, because that's where the zone system in the 40s began, was with Ansel Adams and Archer in the 40s, when he came up with this idea of controlling the negative by understanding where your 18% gray is. So, and anyway, so that's a representation of what it is. Now, you could say, well, some cameras are going to have more than 6 stops on either side of 18% gray. Well, that's fine. You just have to know where clipping is. So you could say from 6 to 8 is clipping. So, you know, that isn't a problem. I just want to put too many colors in the viewfinder so you get confused. I think this is enough, color information that you can understand. And another advantage was that I made the colors dark, light, or light, dark, so you see the separation between the colors. But I also found out that camera manufacturers interpret 18% differently. So you have to take that into consideration when you're analyzing what 18% is.
Yeah, it's quite impressive if you look at the 18% gray values from different camera manufacturers, even within their systems. We're talking like 10% differences in waveform between the 18% grays, like between 30 and above 40% on a waveform, which is kind of crazy. And our friend Dave Stump did quite some research in that regard.
And the only other thing I want to say is the reason it's half stops on either side of the 18% gray is because what's the most important is where you expose your flesh tones. And how do you want to play your flesh tones? Do you want to play them lighter or darker? Also, it depends on the color of the complexion of the skin. So that's why, to me, the most critical part is the flesh tone, and then you balance the negative from your flesh tone.
And I think we just have a small impression of clip how you used it on set. Please don't take pictures or record this.
Los improperios y acción.
This is just shot with my cell phone to capture the two. So I still have detail in those highlights, and I still have detail, some detail, but there's black there where I don't have any detail in the shadow area. And the other advantage of this is, say I come back to this location a week or a month or 6 months, I now have a reference of exactly where the exposure lied, and I can recreate it. So that was the other advantage. The other thing is that I didn't realize post houses have now licensed this, because now they have a way of communicating to us about where our exposure is, the way we used to do it on film when you get your dailies or talk to your daily timer. They can say, well, the window's burned out and yesterday we had detail. Now you have a reference to talk to someone about what the exposure is. And because it maps the whole frame, when you're on the set, you can say to the gaffer, bring the table down a half a stop, or bring the window up a half a stop. So now you have a visual reference on the frame of exactly where your exposure is. So someone can say to you, look, I just do it by eye, and I don't have a problem. Why do I need the zone system? Because I can see what I'm getting. Well, that's true and not true, because say, how is the monitor set up? Or say you change a DIT. So, you then, it's in your hands and your eye to know where the exposure is, because 18% gray is not going to change. So from the 18% gray, you're going to know where the exposure is. And if you have information in the highlight area, or if you have information in the shadow area. So that, to me, is what's important. And I had the problem of, when I made the transition from film to digital, was to understand where my negative was, the way I understood the way I exposed the negative through the printer lights, or how I used my light meter. And that's why I came to this as an idea, was because I felt I was losing control of creating the image the way I saw it, because I had to depend on somebody else to tell me, oh, you have a good negative. But that isn't good enough. No aspersions towards airy, but they have green for everything is good. But that's not specific enough. I want to know what's the difference between someone in the background to the foreground. So I want to know that they're 2 stops down or 3 stops over, that I still have information. And then the other advantage is when cameras are set up, they're not all set up the same way sometimes. So again, you have a reference to know what you're looking at.
And actually, with everybody now seeing how you used it and having a live feed of you in EL Zone system, the question is, do you want to guide us through the general principle of working pretty fast, or how it works pretty fast? How it's been used by you on your set in conversations?
Well, no, I just kind of said it. You know, I have a way of communicating to the crew, and what it does is it gives me trust about what I'm doing. What I'm seeing is what I'm getting. You know, so you know, I know everybody says, well, the monitor is there. If it's properly set up, that's what I'm getting. But what happens when, like I said, I come back a week or 2 weeks from now and I have to recreate something? I don't exactly know how much shadow detail I had there or overexposure there. And like I say, then when I even go into post, when I gonna grade the film, I then go into it with the confidence that I know I had the information in the negative or in the chip, whatever you want to call it, in the original material, that I can control it later.
So you said something very interesting. That was what I was going for, actually. In our conversation right before the panel, you mentioned that having the EL Zone system running on your camera actually gives you a spot meter for every single pixel at the glimpse within a glimpse of a second, because you can just like discuss every single part of your image. And I thought that was a very, very interesting idea, especially as last year when we had this conversation, about 80% of the audience were saying they are still using spot meters, which made us both very happy. Mm-hmm. So this is actually your very advanced armada of spot meters.
Yeah.
So another impression of you using...
Yeah, so here, you know, it's yellow. Those white gowns, the nuns are yellow, so I have information there. But on the monitor in 709, it looks like it's burned out, but I know I have detail there. And then where you see it's, well, when it pans down, where you see it's red, I know, oh, I just have enough information to read. And in the interior, which was just really available light there, I could balance with a 12K outside to where they were. So again, it was something I could do where I had some trust to what I was looking at.
And here we have another impression of a day exterior.
Yeah, I found it really helped out in day exteriors because, you know, you always don't know if the sky is burnt out so far, you know, will you have information or not? And then you can adjust the exposure, obviously, on the lens to decide where you want to place the negative. So, you know, this is just a walk and talk. And I have information all over there.
You can probably see only a very, very tiny spot of actual clipping, white clipping, right in the center. But besides that, all the information is there. Yeah, it's a very important question. You probably answered it already quite many times, and also today, why the EL Zone system? And probably something you didn't emphasize to this point too strongly. It's really great that it's manufacturer agnostic. Like even if you're mixing cameras, even if you're using different programs and mixing cameras, talking between different worlds of post-production and set, the system just doesn't care because it's based on 18% gray as well as on stops. The language all of us speak, quite different to IRE, which is probably not the most preferred language of cinematographers. You want to say something to your IRE?
I always make a point about the IRE, and this is the real thing that I discovered. IRE stands for the International Radio Engineers in 1895, when we didn't even have sound, and it's voltage, and that's not what exposure is. Exposure is logarithmic, meaning that you double the amount of light to go from 2 to 2.8. And the way IRE is set up is it's linear. It's like 1 to 10. And then the next stop, it's 1 to 10. So you're not doubling the light level to create the stop. So what I found after doing this so long, I found in low light, your meter will read the same as IRE. But once you go above like 4, there was always a discrepancy. I always go to the DIT and say, it's a 4, right? And he goes, no, 5.6 or 6.3. I go, why is that? You know, so that was my conundrum about why there was this discrepancy, because all our lenses are set up to 18% gray, if you think of what stops are. Our meters are set up that way, but the digital world didn't think that way because they think in the electronic world and they don't think in the photochemical world. So that was the whole genesis of me trying to do this, was to understand what I was doing, because that's the way I figured it out when I used to use black and white Polaroids and compensate my exposure from the Polaroids. So this was the whole genesis of doing it this way. And like I say, monitors aren't always set up the same way, and actually it works. There's a number of documentary cameramen that I know that use this, and it's much faster for them on the run to see in the viewfinder, hit a button, and they see where their exposure is, where they don't have to stop and look at a waveform monitor or false color. That, like every manufacturer has a different interpretation of false color. The beauty of this is that this will work with any camera. This will work with Sony, this will work with Arri, this will work with Red. So that's why I don't want this to be a proprietary material. I want this to be kind of a universal thing. And I kind of batted my brains out for 5 years, but now it works so well for me, I don't really care if anybody uses it. I now know what I'm doing, you know. I don't have to rely on a DIT, because we love our DITs, but you know, DITs are trying to protect themselves too, you know, that you have an image. So either a lot of my friends that are cameramen are shooting so low light that they don't want to depend on the DIT, or get into a post session where they're going to change what they're doing. So now, you know, you can know what you have, so you don't have to, you know, fall at that.
Yeah. And something that made both of us very happy with the, let's say, liberalization of exposure metering tools, courtesy of small HD, the fact that as long as your camera manufacturers are still working on the implementation, and almost all of them are, you have the option to use small HD screens to use the L-Zone system. And something that made us very happy yesterday evening, having dinner with many colleagues, we stumbled upon a colleague who actually mentioned that he was already using the L-Zone system. And yeah, I spotted him in the audience, and this is not pre-set or pre-discussed, but I would just hand the microphone to Edem here, who was actually using it under production and told us about it.
Yeah, say where you are and what you did.
Hey everyone, my name's Adam. I just shot a feature film in Canada, and I was here last year, and Ed was talking about the L-Zone system, and I was like, this will be great. And then Small HD just released it in time in September, so I actually used it on the film, and it was great. We shot on the Sony Venice, and I was able to meter exactly where I needed my skin tones, exactly where I needed to be 18% gray, and it was fantastic. It was a huge help on the film. We had a lot of like night exterior scenes as well, so even with that, it really helped me instead of using just waveform and regular false color. Yeah.
Why don't you point the camera around and we can still make the music videos, all right? Now, and then change the exposure so they can do it.
Yeah, you see how it's just T1 lenses, so oh, that's interesting. Interesting correlation between the light of the screen up there reminding you again.
Right.
So no, like you can actually see we're drastically overexposing all of you right at the moment. I think nobody would agree with that exposure, and you probably wouldn't even need the ELO system for that. But yeah, that is how it works.
But how about we just bring it up a hair? There. How's that? Where are the colors there in the model?
What's green?
What? Green?
Green, a tad underexposed, I would.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like half a stop, which is.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's.
you probably don't even need the ELO system, but for all the other people in the room, no.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, but if you want to match something, you know, in this room to another room, you know where you exposed it at.
Yeah, and
So why don't we open it up and then we'll still have questions.
yeah, I think opening up this conversation makes a lot of sense because then Ed still makes it, and probably some of you as well, to the music video competition. So are there any? Oh, and already quite some people are leaving for the music video competition.
Save me a seat.
No, but honestly, before we start with that, this really made us very happy. Like from last year to this year, we suddenly had somebody who actually used it in the audience. From this year to next year, we're looking forward to probably same as light, an exponential growth. Exponentials of one aren't too good, but we're already with 2 people here, so.
Let's see if there's questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I have a quick question. Thank you for tonight. Actually, on one of the clip you showed, there was like a 14.5 cc correction, and I was a bit surprised since it's black and white camera, and I was wondering if you were using it as like a color filter to change the contrast or something, or why were there a color correction value on the thing? Oh,
okay. Very. Due to that, this was already a couple of months ago, and this was absolutely pre everything status, pre-alpha, I would say. The black and white camera doesn't care about color. Monochrome camera doesn't care about color. That's why the CC had no creative reason. The color correction there was done because the camera didn't know at that point that it was a monochromatic camera. It thought it was a color camera, only seeing monochromatic things and still trying to debayer and interpret them with color back in the day. Like this was prototype stage, now it works fine, it knows it's monochrome. But what happened is if you didn't adjust the right color temperature, you actually had magenta cast over the whole image because it tried to mix the white balance component into the debayering process.
You mean because it was on production, it was 2 people walking when talking, so the camera was still in this alpha situation?
Yeah, this was literally like Ari built that camera, like from the whole idea having that camera or getting that camera to being on set. And you know how long it took them to build the Alexa 35, and this was just a couple of weeks of the announcement. Yeah, it was 3 months. They built that camera in 4 weeks. So I think it was fair, and it was really quite funny because you had to do this calibration to get a monochromatic output. And what does a good assistant do when this camera arrives in Chile from Munich? He does a factory reset. So we had some wonderful FaceTime and WhatsApp chats to make things work, but luckily I had a good DIT as well who took care and documented everything. And so Ed was set up to shoot. And this was a no-brainer. Like, it was really impressive. Like, this is the only thing that you could take care of, and was just like preview related. The footage wasn't affected at all because you could just turn saturation off and dewear it monochromatic. But you had everything else went quite fine. The camera didn't show any other irregularities and just behaved like a normal mini-elf, didn't it, Ed? Yeah, he's already checking. No, but that was the reason for the plus 14. And you can imagine, like, I never used plus 14 in my professional life, ever. Like, the cast was quite severe. Yeah, anyone else?
I noticed there was this magic number on those few clips. The white balance was set up to 5240.
Yeah.
Is that kind of...
That is exactly that magic number, 5,240 Kelvin and plus 14.5. As soon as this becomes really relevant, you actually know these numbers by heart at some point. Yeah.
I would like to know why false color system and waveform has been developed first and not immediately this zone system.
Why people were developing the zone system in the first place, but chose something bonkers as
I have no idea. No, I really think because engineers think in the electronic world, and we think, or I think in the chemical world, and yeah, it's so obvious.
There's a wonderful quote from Ed from last year that he wouldn't trust something in cinematography that is called false color. So. So, any more questions? None? So, then we call it a night here and just run over. Oh, no, so sorry. Somebody still has a question? Where? Speak out. Edem, sorry.
I forgot to mention, one key takeaway too that I had on the film was that we were shooting 2 units sometimes simultaneously. So, and sometimes my second unit was going off and shooting inserts for a scene that we've already shot. So what I actually did was I took some of the shots we shot earlier, I screenshotted on the small HD of not only like what the framing I needed, but also the zone system. And then my second unit DP actually went in and looked at that and used that as a reference when she shot all the other insert stuff for that scene. So it was perfectly balanced to what I had already pre-existingly shot. And yeah, it was a great tool for that reason.
So just bug your camera manufacturers, please, because even Ed on his film had to use it via a small HD screen. It was probably a bit too much to ask for all of that within 3 months, especially ask the wonderful folks at RE Rental. But here we have, oh no, unfortunately you already left. Mark Shipman Miller from RE is waiting for your call and your emails to ask him when he's done integrating EL Zone System into the rest of the RE fleet.
I'll loan you his email and phone number, and you can call him all.
Just to say thank you for making the... So I have suffered so much. It's called scholar. Thank you.
I know well. I was doing it. It was really a selfish act. I was really trying to do it to figure things out myself. But I'm glad that it can be used, if we can get the camera manufacturers to do it. But if not, we got the zones, the small HD now. So.
9 years ago, with the first Alexa, I was suffering with the false color.
Oh. Yeah.
It's perfect because the engineering guys of RE are sitting right in front of you. Big shout out! big shout out to David and David again for making the camera happen, and to all those folks at RE. and to all those wonderful folks at ARI, but also other manufacturers of gear, providing us with so many amazing tools to enhance our work, ease our work, or just have fun with. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed, and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.